Welcome to Outa Space, International Arts and Class Struggle Podcast.
Turning negatives into positives and fighting the far right today. An interview with Joe Solo. Hello, I'm Rob McDonald and I am your host for Outer Space International Arts and Class Struggle podcast. This podcast is part of a series of podcasts that we are doing related to the historical memory of the Spanish Civil War, particularly the Solidarity Park project. So we're going to be talking to lots of artists involved in that project. What are their reasons to be involved? How do they see the fight against fascism and the far right today? But also their general political outlook, and touching on many of the questions that the podcast normally talks about. We're also going to make a bit of investigation into the role of women in the struggle for the historical memory today, the recuperation of the memory. We'd also like to thank the Diputació de Barcelona and Amical, the International Brigades Association in Catalonia, for their support in this project. Okay, let's go to the podcast. Well, welcome Joe Solo to the Outer Space podcast supporting the Solidarity Park project. How are you doing, Joe, first of all?
Hey, not bad. It's a bit cold in here tonight, but, fair enough.
You're in your shed, are you? Your music shed?
I am in the infamous shed built with solidarity to perform more solidarity. Yeah.
Wonderful. I mean, just for people who don't know you that well, you do regular shows on Facebook and stuff, and you do it from your shed, which I presume is at the back of your garden, yeah?
It is, yeah. It's proper base of operations, even more so since lockdown came along, because it was my only venue for a good year or so. No, this is where everything gets done. Live streams, rehearsing, recording. Yeah, this is it. But it's quite a place these days.
Yeah, no, it looks it. I'm a bit of a shed man. I'm a bit of a workshop space kind of guy, and so I look at it online. I think it looks really cool. You got your posters, that kind of stuff. So, I mean, is that where you write most of your music? Is that where your creativity happens?
No, I tend to write while I'm driving around at work. Really, I think the rhythm of the road really helps me. I tend to write words and melodies, and then bring them back and come up on the guitar. I'm not one of those people who can sit down with a guitar and write a song.
Right,
I have the song before I pick the guitar up usually.
Well, you're a washing machine salesman, aren't you? Repair man, yeah?
I'm a repairman, so I drive around all day, and sometimes up to a couple of 100 miles a day in my van, and then maybe that again to do a gig on the night. So the road and the movement and that just seems to
Isn't
work
that
with me.
how the blues were meant to be, on the road kind of thing, with the rhythm of the tracks, that kind of thing? So you got the rhythm of the engine, have you? Or maybe the rhythm of the washing machine even?
I have no idea what the rhythm is, but it's definitely conducive to writing, particularly in the morning. I'm quite interested in that, because I know that the writers like Steinbeck and Hemingway and that, they used to get up really early in the morning and then write and then stop and have breakfast and I think your brain works different in the morning. It's like it's wired differently before. I guess it's before capitalism takes over and you have to do the daily grind.
Actually, I'll tell you what, Joe. I think you've got an interesting point there. People that know me very well is they know they get messages off me far too early in the morning, because I wake up. I've got my life before as a young man was on a building site. So I'm 7 o'clock, 6 o'clock. I wake up at 5 most days, and actually that's the clearest time I think. We're recording this in the evening, people are listening. So I'm a bit more bumbling and I don't really know what I'm doing. But first thing in the morning, So that's when you write your songs. Okay, cool. Well, listen.
Yeah, there's something in it. I think you wake up with. I tend to wake up with a line in my head or something, and sometimes some days it's rubbish, and some days you're just ripping on it for a couple of hours before the day takes over. I think I probably wake up. I wake up an anarcho-socialist, and then as the capitalism creeps into the day, the songs get washed out of you somehow.
Well, no, I can see that. I mean, yeah, as it takes over, you start to lose your creativity, you start to lose your mind and your will to live sometimes, let's be honest.
Yeah, sometimes. But, I mean, so long as you still wake up I think you're still fighting, aren't you? It's when you wake up a capitalist, then you've got to start worrying, aren't you?
Yeah, that's very true. You should always start red in the morning. There should be a red star at night, Shepherd's Delight or something like that. Anyway,
yeah, the reason red star in the morning, systems warning. That's what it should be.
Here we go. Nice one, Joe. Nice one. So got your interview today because we're doing a series of podcasts on the Solidarity Park project, on the historical memory of the Spanish Civil War. You've played a good part in the Solidarity Park project so far. You were in the 2019 online festival we did. You did a couple of songs. Following year, 2020, well, actually, no, it's this year, 2021. I got that wrong. You did a whole set for us. And I touched there a little bit on the shed and you're on the road and how you write. One of the things I'm interested from you tonight is how do you start to create a song that, talks about fighting against the far right, fighting against fascism, and often your songs talk about historical memories and stuff like that. So, I mean, maybe run us through some of the creative process that goes into that.
Well, I always think that I try to write with one foot in the present and one foot in the past. So when I sing a history song, it's because I'm trying to say something about what's going on around me. And I think that it's twofold. One, if you can suggest it through history, then it shows you that these things keep coming back. They keep repeating themselves. Where if you're right in the moment now, there's no perspective on it. It's like pressing a panic button on something. Whereas if you understand the history of fascism and you understand where it came from and how it developed, then and understand that people defeated it before, then that gives you more. I don't know. It's more inspiring because it shows you, look, these are dark times, but those were dark times too, and we beat them then, and we'll beat them now. And you need that kind of thing going on. And the other thing I try and write is just working people in a situation like ordinary people in extraordinary circumstances. I try and write because I think that even if you don't know anything about the politics or understand the politics, even if you're not a lefty, if you can understand that a human being in a situation, it gives you a connection you wouldn't have if it was dry tracked, So that's how I try and write. I try and make, emotional connections between human beings at the same time that I'm telling people this has happened before. We've done it before. We can do it again. So that's my starting point. I kind of want to, I want to inspire. I don't just want it to be look what happened to this poor man here. I want it to be I want his life and his death, or her life and her death, to mean something emotional and tangible and inspirational now. So
yeah, can you mention a couple of the songs that you've written in that sort of guise? Because I mean, I'm interested in so you learn about a history about somebody and you write about them. Is that like you go on the internet and you find out, or you read a book, or what? I mean, give us an example of one of your songs. Right.
Okay. The one that everybody asks about the most is No Pass Around.
Yes.
And that was the one that kickstarted that album. And I wanted to write an album about Spain, but I wanted to write about it through the international brigades, because the history of Spain is really, really complicated, and so somebody from the outside sort of casting an opinion over it, I don't think works. I think that seems to me a peculiarly Empire England thing to do. Do you know what I mean? We have our judgments, and we know better than somebody who actually lived through it and whose family was wrapped up in it. We don't, and so I didn't want to approach it from that subject, but from that angle. But the international brigades is a different thing altogether. And so it gave us this is the purity of the politics. These were the people who fought it. This is what they were fighting for, and this is where it went wrong, and how it went wrong is an interesting way to write, and an easier way to write, so that I'm not insulting generations of people from Spain, you know, whose real lives and real relatives were wrapped up in this. But that all started out. I wanted to write the record, and it all started out from a friend of a friend. My friend Giles, his great uncle was Jack Atkinson, who was killed at Hablamos.
Okay, so you know somebody from, because I know the song "My Passed Around," and I didn't know that you knew there was anything. Okay, excellent.
So Giles, he got wind of it through my friend Andy that I was wanting to write this record, and he said, like Andy's mentioned that you might be interested in my Uncle Jack. This is all I know about him, and he wrote me this letter. And he included in the parcel a book by Tommy James. It's called Lion of a Man. It's and Pounded Earth. It's Tommy James's sort of like quite short autobiographical description of his life in Spain. And you see, Tommy James travelled on the train south with Jack Atkinson and another couple of people. One of them I know is Arnold Hall from Leeds, and I don't know the name of the other one. But Jack and Tommy obviously knew each other prior to Spain, and when Jack was shot, Tommy was the first person at his side. So immediately you've got an emotional connection, you know. And so from that you're going, right, this Jack Atkinson is a member of the Communist Party. He's 25 years old when he's killed. He's shot in the face by a fascist machine gun bullet. He's dead before he hits the ground. Tommy James finds him. What made him walk over those trenches into that hail of machine gun bullets? Because it wasn't a flag and it wasn't paid, like as the poem goes. It was conviction, you know. It was a political certainty that moment there was exactly where he had to be and exactly the right thing to do. And he was willing to walk out there and die for politics, for what he believed in. And perhaps not only did he die in Spain, but that did as well. That sense of certainty, because as you know, through the history of Spain and what have you, the way that Stalinism operated, the way that the workers' revolution was crushed by, you know, the democratic government, the International Brigade of Army, you know, there's this triangle of people all fighting. It's very, very complicated, massively interesting, but that whole dream of this being right and that being wrong seemed to die in Spain. And I wanted to capture the absolute moment of certainty when Jack Atkinson is walking into those bullets, because what he believes in is worth dying for, because that is the essence of what I think is important in our politics and important in inspiring the next generation. But I've said it through the mic loads of times, but I don't think if Jack Atkinson had survived the war, he would expect us, our generation, to die for the cause. But I do think it would have expected us to live for it. And that's kind of what I want to capture in those songs. And I hope I did. I think people get that. I think I captured that one pretty good.
Yeah, no, I think, I would definitely agree with you on that. I mean, I'm interested in what you think the role of the artist is in this, because, what do you think Jack Atkinson would think if he was here? Obviously, he had that certain moment that you're talking about. I mean, he had probably quite a few certain moments to get that far, to be honest, and to put himself in that situation. And maybe he was shitting bricks just before he died. But the point being that he'd made that decision beforehand. So he made a political decision, you know. And I sometimes wonder what these people obviously they're gone. But what do you think he would think?
On a purely personal level, he's a working class kid. He'd probably tell me to shut up and organise. I think a few artists have been told that in our time, haven't we? Yeah, and rightly so in many ways, you know, because there is that essence. I think we've spoken about this before. That the singer comes along, gets all the applause, and then leaves the people to actually do the hard graft afterwards. And so I've never wanted to be that way. So I hope that the other stuff I do in life actually proves that I aren't just a limelight stealer. But I think he would tell me to shut up and organise. But I think he probably on the inside, it would be quietly pleased that his life had meant something, you know, and that more people were gonna pick up that mantle and run with it. Because I think that's all any of us can hope for, it that we've earned the right for the next generation to climb on our shoulders, just as we stand on the shoulders of those who came before us. And I think quietly, if he knew that it inspired another generation to clamber on his shoulders and keep fighting, then it wouldn't have minded, you know.
Yeah, I think that probably would be the case, wouldn't it? I mean, you mentioned that the Spanish story is complicated, and history, history often is, because it's often told by the victors to start with, and those, have a different side to say. It takes time for that to feed through the generations and information and all those kind of things. And one of the things of the Solidarity Park project has been, we're building a monument, we have artists involved and whatever, but it's about telling that story, and not just from one side. That's not to say we don't have sides, and it doesn't say that there aren't big issues to discuss, but it's the idea of having a multiple amount of voices to build up a story that maybe is true. I mean, that would be my thing about how Solidarity Park is. I mean, would you think that's how you approach it in terms of being an artist and talking about something heavy and complicated, heavily difficult still today? This isn't yesterday's story. This is a story that the Madrid elections that happened, a few months back, it was heavily laden with the Spanish Civil War propaganda, between right and left and this sort of stuff. So I'm kind of interested. Do you think as an artist there's a special role that we can play in those complicated situations?
Well, I think we have to humanize it. Definitely, which is what I try and do in songs. I would find it very difficult telling the other side, bearing in mind what it represents. And I don't think that's my job. I think that's for a fascist songwriter to do that if they've got one. But I think that you do need to tell that history, and you do need to understand that history, because you have to know where it comes from. And because strictly speaking, by university definitions, Franco wasn't a fascist, was he? He was a military dictator. He had fascist armies because they were backed by fascist states. But in pure ideological sense, it was a military dictator with fascistic forms of government rather than a fascist leader. Like Mussolini or Hitler, and a lot of the fascist boxes weren't ticked. He wasn't empire building. He wasn't invading other countries. That's not to say this man was nice. He wasn't. He was a bastard. But what I'm getting at is when people throw the term fascist around, it loses some of its sense, and if you don't grasp the way that fascism happened in Italy and happened in Germany, then you don't understand how it can happen somewhere else. And I mean, it crept in after the First World War in Italy, when an election went the way of the liberal left, and that government failed because the economic situation was that bad, and that shooed in this new form of leadership and of exploiting the working class. And I worry that we are on a rightward bent the continent over, and that COVID and lockdown and the impact that is having on economies and on communities will present similar circumstances by the time it's played out to the catastrophe that economies faced at the end of the First World War. And I think that in combination with the rightward drift of societies is precisely the place that Mussolini sprang from. And I think that if you don't see that, if you throw the word fascist around at anybody, then you're in danger of allowing history to repeat itself. So, yeah, we need to understand that side of the story and speak about that side of the story and things like this. But I don't think it's my place to sing about it, because I think a song tends to glorify. Even if you're underplaying something, it tends to glorify. And like I said, I think that's somebody else's job. If they want to glorify bastardry, let them do it, but I'm not doing it for them.
I mean, there's some really interesting stuff in there, and I'd like to unpick it a little bit, because, I mean, the overuse of the word fascism, and I would agree with you, that actually it is a scientific definition, if you like. You can sort of play out what is fascism, what isn't, military dictatorships, the different levels that you can do, and that we need to understand that so that we can actually tackle what we're facing. And when I talk about stuff, I talk about fascism and the far right. And I often make that definition, and we're fighting often the far right with fascist tendencies, and it doesn't always have the same thing, and therefore we have to be quite, on the left, we have to know what we're talking about if we've got to build. So I think that's very interesting what you say there, and I would agree with you. And I think that's hard in a song to draw out those things. So I appreciate what you said about making things human and the rest of it. But those subtleties, I mean, I know for myself as a young guy trying to write political songs, it's very hard to get subtlety, and if you're trying to explain a complicated story, you're better off making a documentary and being creative in that, right, than maybe a song. But you hit something there which I think is probably going to be very important in the connection of artists, the struggle, and the historical memory being learnt. And you talked about COVID, because I think the last time we spoke, it was a couple of years ago, actually, wasn't it, at least, on the podcast, pre-COVID. If I remember rightly. I mean, my memory's not too great in the evening, as I remembered. It would be better if we talked in the morning. But this, I mean, the way that COVID is being utilised, let's put it that way, by more authoritarian people. I mean, we're all very happy to have, I mean, I'm presuming you are, happy to have a jab, happy to have a COVID passport, happy to do this, happy to do that. And then suddenly you go, hang on a minute. They know everything I'm doing, everywhere I'm going, that kind of thing. And there's a lot of anger and distrust in society, and it's based on the economy and stuff. So I was going to ask you a question about why you supported this sort of the historical stuff, but I'm interested now that you developed this point a little bit more about how you think things are going to play out and why we need to learn these messages of history. Do you think that we're going to enter, as you were indicating there, we're going to enter a much more right-wing period where we have to, that's going to be one of our major fights? Do you see that as a reality?
I think we're already in it. I think that when Mussolini and when Hitler came to power, the very first play of fascism is to attack the left, and it's to attack the left using, basically working class thuggery groups in those ages, wasn't it? They all had the stormtroopers, and they would shut down union meetings and attack communists and what have you. It was to destroy the left. It was to destroy organised resistance. And you see that playing out online, and you see that playing out through the media in the UK, certainly. You saw it with Jeremy Corbyn. You've seen it with Corbyn supporters. And you see those attacks, they're not necessarily physical anymore, but they are very much the same thing. They're an attempt to silence and discredit voices on the left. So to me, we've already entered into the first stages of a potential thing, and if you don't recognise that, you're gonna fall like an idiot for stage 2 and stage 3. The COVID thing's interesting because, on one level it is totalitarianism, and on another level it very definitely is saving lives. So you've got that balance to strike, and I think that. I think that it's important. I think Chomsky does this best, because he says that you have to question every bit of power in and of itself. And he gives the example of stopping a child running out into the road. And he says, you've exerted power over another life, but that power was for the good of that child, So that on its own is a proper use of power being exerted. But you should always question every little bit of power, and if you don't, then you're in danger of allowing this to cascade. So you have to say to yourself, when each thing comes along, be it lockdown, be it jabs, be it this, be it that, be it the other, be it masks, you've got to ask yourself, is that proportionate, and is that power worth yielding? And at the moment, I think that is. If it stuck around longer than it needed to do, then no, I'll fight it with every cell of my being, because it would then be intrusive power for power's sake. But right now, even as a lefty, a socialist with anarchist tendencies, or whatever you want to do, whatever I woke up as this morning,
Yes.
I think that I question those power plays on their own merit, and at the moment, I don't find a reason to fight them. I know plenty of people are doing, and I think that's a worrying tendency too, because how propaganda works is interesting. Because if you watch any news program in the UK, there'll be two stories that are patently true because you can believe them with you could cross-reference them and everything, and then another one that isn't. And the reason the lies get through is because they're surrounded by truth. Now, on one side, you've got people who believe everything they're told, and that's dangerous, because you're not cross-questioning authority. On the other side, this new kind of people who don't believe anything they're told. They are the flip side of the other coin, but they're equally wrong, because propaganda's cleverer than that. It's not just telling you lies all day. It's mixing them in with truth. That's why it's so potent. And that's why you got to unpick it. You can't just deny everything in the same way that you can't accept everything. You've got to question each story on its own merits, pick it apart on its own merits. And that's how you get to what's a lie and what's the truth. It's massively important that people get that, because those two things, accepting everything and denying everything, are part of the same problem, just from the other side.
Yeah, no, I think it's basically things are a living struggle. There's no point in getting out your Das Kapital and going down the Saturday market with it, because it's not going to impress in that way. On the same hand, we need to have read our stuff. We need to have understood the processes and how it works. I think I agree with you. You talked about propaganda. You talked about COVID, and you also mentioned in there Corbyn. And I think we saw what happened to him. And I think the last time we spoke, you just decided to leave the Labour Party, as you were in briefly, I believe. I think we talked about that a little bit at the time. Now that's a long story gone now, and now he's still got the whip taken off him, hasn't he? And he's sitting there quietly in the corner, being a good boy on one level, and then on another level, he's doing his campaign. It's almost like he's gone back to where he was before he had the explosion of coming into the Labour leader. And that's nothing against him. I've got a lot of time for Corbyn. But what happened to him was quite horrific in terms of the media and the propaganda. And a lot of alternative media turned out. There is different things. There's podcasts like this that don't get huge ratings, but there's lots of places where we talk about stuff. And I think that's a necessity of the day. And I'm kind of interested in how you see the let's say the battle of ideas. And I think for artists, we are in that battle of ideas, and particularly people like yourself, who talk about the historical memory, talk about politics, who got these things, and myself. We are in that battle right now. You've mentioned it. We're in maybe the first couple of stages of being in some serious danger, that we need to get our shit together, basically, and put an alternative. We need to pull our forces together as best we can, and we still need to have those tough debates. I'm sort of wondering, what's your how have you viewed how the post-Corbyn era, the attacks on him, and if I can say it, the attacks actually, some of them have come at your door as well, with the hope not hate business. So you have a perspective on all that at the moment?
Yeah, I think we spoke last time that Gramsci best sums up Corbyn's situation. Gramsci gave the analogy of the castle and the ramparts and the moat and
I remember
the forces,
the
forces of the state are there to protect the castle, and the castle is the establishment, and we're all on the outside. And Corbyn was stood on the top of the ramparts waving, saying, I'm about to lower the drawbridge, I'm about to lower the drawbridge. And then we all going, oh, look, there's Jeremy Corbyn. Whoa, Jeremy Corbyn. Oh, he's about to lower the... Oh, is he? What should we do then? I don't know. Let's make a Corbyn T-shirt and a banner. And we could have stormed the castle, but somebody took him down and wound the drawbridge back up again because we ain't got any ideology. We've lost that. We've lost our class politics, to me, and I think that's the massive danger. We are in an age where the left has lost its ideological centre, and it's a series of identity politics campaigns that are all important. Don't get me wrong, they are all vitally important, but they need to match under the class banner rather than try and attack the establishment as separate entities, because all that's going to do is get you a few crumbs off the table and then sent back down, and then well, they got what we didn't get, and so on, and it'll just, instead of attacking that way, we'll attack each other because so and so got more than so. And without that class perspective, we're in all kinds of danger. Actually, going back to Jack Atkinson, this is interesting because this highlights identity politics in Jack Atkinson, when he went over the top at Harama, was fighting Franco's fascists. Yes, he was, but they were Moroccans. So identity politics would have Jack Atkinson labelled as a racist because he was attacking somebody of colour. Do you know what I mean? It's insane to think like that. You're working class attacking fascist armies. Do you know? Once you start bringing in all the identities and things like that, you're at sixes and sevens. You no longer have that fight. You no longer have that certainty that I spoke of before. And it's a really, really worrying thing that we've lost that core. And I don't know if it's particular to the UK that we've lost our trade union movement. I know that was a deliberate play by Reagan and Thatcher in the 80s to destroy organised trade unionism, to take it down so that working class people weren't brought up on these sort of ideological principles. I don't know if it's a result of that, if it's just a UK thing, if it goes right the way across Europe, but I do know that we have been severely weakened by our loss of that sense of ideological centre, that we are now, the left is a series of campaigning groups trying to get concessions out of capitalism rather than trying to take it down.
Do you think the question can be sort of explained in the historical memory of the Spanish Civil War? Do you think that's one of its potentials as a historical moment?
Well, all those things are playing out, aren't they? Because at the same time, give or take, as Franco's armed coup, you've got a workers' revolution taking place, haven't you? You've got the CNT and the POUM organising workers and the peasants taking over the farmlands and the business. So you've got two revolutions happening at the same time, and in between them, what's essentially a bourgeois liberal state. I know we all rush to its side and fly its flag, but in essence, it's a bourgeois liberal state. Stalin comes in, doesn't want to upset the West, so he keeps the essence of that state in place and turns against the workers' revolution that he originally stood for. So it gets really complicated. But in there, you see that split between people. So again, you can hold up our current problems to Spain. You've got the people who ran to the workers' revolution. You've got the people who ran to the armed revolution, the dictator, and you've got the people who sought the solace in a bourgeois capitalist state. And there's, albeit a socialist one, don't get me wrong, I'm not picking sides here. I'm just saying that you've got the same kind of thing playing out now, but the more that you flock to a capitalist structure looking for socialist outcomes, the more you're going to be disappointed. Over here, I always say that if you, even with Corbyn in charge, he would never have got anything through Parliament. There was not enough Socialist Labour MPs for him to make any dent whatsoever in the outcomes of working class people beyond giving them something to cheer about, it just wouldn't have happened, because the Palace of Westminster is an establishment state. It is not going to vote itself socialist. Not on any level is that going to vote itself socialist. So while I was disappointed to see the end of that, because I thought it was good, it was getting people thinking about leftist politics and what could be achieved and how communities could be improved and how the world could be better. It wasn't going to be socialism. It was going to be a more liberalised version of capitalism, a more liberalism with some socialistic tendencies. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, definitely. I see where you're going with that one. From Solidarity Park's point of view, which obviously I'm one of the coordinators of, your work with us has been outstanding. You're one of the easiest artists to work with, because you say, Joe, can you do it? And you're there, and I know, for instance, on we had a real worry about copywriting a couple of days before the live stuff we put out at last year's festival, and you did a whole new set for us. And I get lost in the amount of projects that you're involved in. I think I work hard, and I do. And I watch how you work, and I think, bloody hell, I want some of the tablets he's taking. For me, I think your work rate, your commitment to the cause are second to none. And I just want to ask you, because I mentioned it in my last question, I did want to sort of come to this this blip in the situation that happened recently, because you were in the hope not hate person of the year or whatever it was. I can't exactly remember. Somebody who struggled hard. I saw that. I voted for you. I went straight to the thing, did it, and it was obvious because of all the work you've done. And I was thinking, yeah, give the guy an award. That kind of feeling. It came for me, and I think a lot of people did the same. And then it all went a bit pear-shaped, eh? I don't know if you can explain some of that to the listeners and give us a bit of an opinion. I don't know how you feel about that.
I can't. First of all, as I've said before, I don't want to attack Hope Not Hate per se on this. I think they do some good work, particularly in communities, particularly the street teams. I think are brilliant. I think on this one they got it wrong, and I think they laid themselves wide open, and I think they bowed too quickly to pressure. Maybe
explain a little bit what happened, because not everybody will know.
I was nominated for a Hope Award by a member of the public, and there were 300 plus people nominated, and Hope Not Hate themselves shortlisted 6, and I was one of the 6. So that was when you started to see the posts on Facebook, because we were asked to campaign, And I've not actually wanted to go for this, but I spoke to the We Shall Overcome guys, and they said, look, it's been a tough year to raise any money. There's £5,000 attached to that prize fund, and you really need to go for this, because that's a lot of help we can get to people at Christmas if you win it. So I said, fair enough. I'll take one for the team. I don't like coverage. I don't think it works. I think if you ask... certainly the musicians I know, if you get some national radio play, if you sell one CD off the back of that, you're lucky. It doesn't have the impact that people think it has. But what it does do is expose you to negativity. And I think I'm probably more in line with anarcho-syndicalism, in that I think small numbers of people can do more than large numbers of people, because large numbers of people tend to cede responsibility to the person stood next to them, and you also draw in people who are just going to diss everything and put it down and destroy it. Whereas small numbers of really positive people can achieve great things, which is what We Shall Overcome's all about. So I don't like national coverage. I've never been one who wanted to be a star. I've never been one who wanted a record deal and international tours and all that, because I know I'm really effective if you put me in front of a small number of people, and we have that to-in and fro-in between us in a gig, And so I'm quite happy to operate like that, and I'm quite effective at working like that, and I bring people together who've never seen me play a show before because of how I can operate online. But what happened was that as soon as I was put on that pedestal, and I don't think this was me. I think the attack was at Hope Not Hate, because I think everybody who was shortlisted will have gone through the same thing, that the cancel culture trolls will have been on there, done the research about every last one of us, and the person that won the prize would be the one that got took down. Right? I think it was an attack on Hope Not Hate, an attack on the left. I don't think it was aimed specifically at me, so I don't take it personally. I think the way that Hope Not Hate reacted was personal to me, but I don't think the process itself was. And I think that it would have happened to whoever won that prize, and I think it was just a part of what we've spoken about before. This kind
I think that's interesting to connect the two. Yeah.
It's a rolling takedown of anybody on the left who sticks their head above the parapet with any kind of positive message that seems to have some momentum. So they immediately trolled back through my posts, dug up some stuff that was I had 2 posts where I'd supported Chris Williamson over points of order in the Labour Party, and then extended that to me being anti-Semitic. At this point, on both of those posts, Chris was found not guilty of the charges, so how I can be supporting a not guilty man and found guilty, I don't know. And I described that as a process of retrospective guilt by association, which I think has dangerous fascistic undertones in and of itself, you know?
Yeah.
And so, for a day or two, I was tearing my hair out, thinking, have I done something? Have I opened my door?
Have I made a blunder on telly, kind of thing? Have I said the wrong thing?
Yeah. And I read back through the post, and I thought, no. Both of these times I've supported him publicly, he was found not guilty, and he was reinstated after one, and when he wasn't reinstated after the other, the courts ruled in favour of him against the Labour Party. So I was right to support him in struggle. Yeah. In a period of turmoil, and on both occasions I was borne out by the process and the law, and on both occasions I was even saying, look, we need to take seriously this problem of racism and anti-Semitism. It needs dealing with, but I don't believe this is it, you know. And so after a while I thought, well, look, I'm not wrong here. They're just literally deliberately misquoting me in order to cause this fuss. At that point, I would have hoped that Hope Not Hate would have sent the
grasped that basic thing that's going on in society.
Yeah. And instead they facilitated it. They allowed that to happen. They allowed an awful lot of nasty stuff to appear on their threads and stay on their threads. And
how do you think? I want to diverge slightly, because I've had my rumbles in time, and we have a great potential of attacking each other on the left, and do you think it's a weakness of our ideology base, this class question we talked about, or do you think we've got a bit lost? The fact that, how can we be so weak, if you know what I'm saying? Because I think if anybody was, because if anybody looks at your record, and looked at those posts, they would say, right, bollocks, move on.
Exactly, and every working class socialist that I know was either on my mobile phone supporting me, was texting me, was sending me messages behind the scenes, was attacking the trolls. I'm thinking every single one of them. The problem with the left is it's populated by fifth columnist centralist liberals, and it's them that do the attacking. The socialists were right on my shoulder right the way throughout. They said, that's bollocks, Joe's a good guy, look at all the things he does, this is absolute nonsense. They were right with me right the way from the start, from day one. It's the fact that you've got them other voices in there that want to keep the left as a buffer between the working class and change, and that's their job, and they do it very well. And so when we say the left tears itself apart, it doesn't. The left is really strong. It's the centrists that tear the left apart, and that's another thing you need to recognise, so that we don't, bloody lefties are always falling out with each other. No, lefties stand strong. Genuine lefties. I'm not going to name names because it's not fair, but some quite famous people were at my shoulder right the way from the start, and the real socialists always will be. it's the fact that the left is populated by people who aren't socialist. If they say they are, they've not got ideology at their core. That they just believe that this could be fair and that could be fair, and if we tweak capitalism and make it a little bit nicer, then everything will be all right. But they're just liberals, you know. They're not socialists. Real socialists are there. They're fighting for each other, you know.
Yeah, we know when the shit gets tough, we put a few things aside and we fight. You know, I think, I think maybe just to wrap up the story there for the people who are listening, what are they really talking about? What happened in the end? What was the response? I mean, you didn't get your $5,000 because you won, basically.
Yeah,
you won the popular vote.
I won the vote. They withdrew the award within 24 hours, 36 hours. I'd already committed to spending the money. It was going out to street teams, to homeless support, to community outreach. And they withdrew the money. Then there was such a backlash from the other side that they phoned me up and offered me the money. And I politely declined, in words I probably can't use on a podcast. And because
you can on this one if you want.
Well, to me, taking that money, that was then tainted money. That was then the equivalent of me crossing a picket line, and I couldn't do it. You know, even though people were going to go without, there's a principle there. I'm not taking money that's been withdrawn from me, and my name's been smeared, and you've allowed that to happen. I'm not taking that money. That's tainted money. You know, but a brilliant bloke called Tony Booth saw that, and he set up a GoFundMe and gave people something to rally around rather than fighting trolls on threads, which just makes you feel ill, doesn't it? Because you get nowhere. I've been there, You just leave them to it. Block and delete, just no point. So he set up this GoFundMe, and it gave people who didn't want to roll up the sleeves and get the fists out something to rally around and fight. So instead of the $5,000, we finished with $10,000. So we doubled the prize money, and that cleared on Monday. Actually, I've just been giving it away. I've been giving it away up and down the country to working class anti-fascist causes, so we can keep the far right off our estates and stuff by getting them food parcels out to people, making sure they know that it's coming wrapped in unity and solidarity, you know. So in the end, we've done good with that situation, and I can't thank Tony or the people that rallied to my side enough, nor can I thank the people who were sending me messages enough, because it mattered a lot. And when you're at the centre of all that hate, it's a really tough place to be. But I'll tell you what, it really did make me respect Corbyn even more, because he had what, 6 years of that shit, and I had about 6 days, and that was enough for me. It was horrible, absolutely horrible. But at the end, you know, we did good with it. I'm not what they say I am, as everybody who knows me knows. It's just an attempt to take down another lefty.
Well, it's a good indicator of the bollocks that can come out, and we need to learn that. Eh?
Yeah. As my mate Joe says, cowards flinch and traitors smear.
Yeah, and we'll keep the red flag flying here. Okay, well, I think that's a good way to end on what seemed like a negative, but actually is a super positive. And also, thank you again, Joe, for all the support. I mean, as soon as I saw it, I thought we're going to get this guy back on, because, you know, the stuff you're doing is great. We're really hoping you're going to come out to us in May and play some numbers in real time. We're going to talk about that in the next couple of weeks. Hopefully we can get you a ticket out there.
Fingers crossed if the virus don't do more stuff. You know?
Yeah, we have a bit of those problems. Yeah, well, I mean, we're busy trying to put the festival together here. But thanks for talking about the historical memory stuff, the link and the fight against fascism, how your artwork, how you create your artwork, and obviously the day-to-day struggles that you're going through, whatever they may be. And look forward to having you back in the near future, Joe. Thanks a lot, mate.
Thanks, Rob. Take care. Solidarity.
Okay, bye now. Solidarity to you.
We hope you enjoyed the show. If you have something to say to us, then join our Facebook group or contact us at outaspace.com. That's outa-space.com. See you soon.